And now we come to chapter 31 of the Screwtape letters, the final chapter. And we see that there's been a terrible development in the life of the man for Screwtape and Wormwood. That terrible development is he has died. He was killed in the midst of the war in that bombing that we've heard about in the previous chapters. And we see that Screwtape is already seeing the defeat of Wormwood as a chance for him to become food for himself. We hear this in this chapter, "You have let a soul slip through your fingers. The howl of sharpened famine for that loss re-echoes at this very moment through all the levels of the kingdom of noise, down to the very throne itself. It makes me mad to think of it. How well I know what happened the instant when they snatched him from you." And he describes that instant. "There was a sudden clearing of his eyes, was there not, as he saw you for the first time and recognized the part you had in him and knew that you had it no longer." Again, suddenly that man realized all the workings of the devil, but realized that he was free from it. Screwtape points out, the more one thinks about it, the worse it becomes. He got through so easily. No gradual misgivings, no doctor's sentence, no nursing home, no operating theater, no false hopes of life, sheer instantaneous liberation. One moment it seemed to be all our world. The scream of bombs, the fall of houses, the stink and the taste of high explosive on the lips and in the lungs, the feet burning with weariness, the cold horrors, the brain reeling, the legs aching. And the next moment, all this was gone, like a bad dream, never to be of any account. He chides Wormwood, defeated, outmaneuvered fool. Did you mark how naturally, as if he had been born for it, the earthly born vermin entered the new life? That was because he was born for it. That's what we are born for, is eternity. Again, we often remember the old Baltimore Catechism that asks the question, who made you? God made you. And the next question is, why did he make you? To love him, serve him, and follow him in this life and be happy with him in the next. Again, that's what we're created for. We're not created entirely for this life. We're created for the next life. Then Screwtape describes the experience of the man. As he saw you, he also saw them. I know how it was. You reeled back dizzy and blinded, more hurt by them than he had ever been by bombs. The degradation of it, that this thing of earth and slime could stand up and converse with the spirits, before whom you, a spirit, could only cower. Again, we're talking about the saints. We're talking about those of heaven. We're talking about the angels. Screwtape goes on, perhaps you could have hoped that the awe and strangeness of it would dash his joy. But that is the cursed thing. The gods are strange to mortal eyes, and yet they are not strange. He had no faintest conception till that very hour how they would look, and even doubted their existence. But when he saw them, he knew that he had always known them, and realized what part each of them had played at many an hour in his life, when he had supposed himself alone, so that now he could say to them, one by one, not, who are you, but so it was you all the time. Thinking about looking back and realizing how God and the angels and the saints have helped us as we go along. I often think about that when this movie that I saw a bunch of years ago called Millions. It's set in a fictional time when England's about to go onto the euro. It's the last few weeks of the year when the pound is just about to go out of existence. And a boy finds a bag of money that a group of robbers had stolen. They stole it from a bank and threw it off a train, and he finds it. But the boy is an unusual boy because he stops and talks to the saints throughout the movie. He'll run into St. Nicholas. He'll run into the martyrs of Uganda. He runs into St. Clair. He talks to them, greeting them by name, telling them the years that they lived. And so as he's doing this, the thieves are coming after him, and he goes and hides out in a house. He hides out in the attic of the house. And in one of the outtakes that I think is absolutely wonderful, I'll use it at RCIA for talking about the saints. The robber is trying to get into the house. He's reaching through the door, he's trying to get the door open, and the boy is afraid up in the attic. And then suddenly the scene shifts, and you see sitting all around him are all the saints that he had been talking to throughout the movie. And then he starts to get the hiccups, and you see St. Clair suddenly make the sign of the cross. And you see all the saints praying for him, surrounding him. Then again, he's about to hiccup, and you see a hand come out and grab his nose, and you can tell from the stigmata on the hand that it was St. Francis, to whom we talked to earlier, who was there, trying to protect him and keep him from being found out up in the attic. Again, he realized that the saints were all around him. They were all there all the time. It's just a matter of time until suddenly we realize that indeed the saints and the angels, but especially the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are with us always. Screwtape continues. He not only saw them, he saw him. This animal, this thing begotten in a bed, could look upon him. What is blinding, suffocating fire to you is now cool light to him, is clarity itself, and wears the form of a man. In this, we see that the man saw God. He encountered that God that the demons cannot look upon without fire and pain. And he wears the form of a man. Yes, indeed, it is a man, Jesus Christ, the God and man. This reminds me of one of my favorite parts at the end of the Divine Comedy of Dante. When we get to the Paradiso, when he's going through heaven, in the very final chapters, he is looking upon the glory of the Trinity. And he does notice within the Trinity the image of a man, because Christ, once become man, forever carries our humanity and divinity together in eternity. So even as in the Godhead itself, even in the Trinity, a bit of humanity has been taken up into it. Screwtape tells Wormwood, he is caught up into that world where pain and pleasure take on transitive values, and all of our arithmetic is dismayed. Again, no matter what the devil's trying to add up, it doesn't add up to what God has to offer. Screwtape complains, next to the curse of useless tempters like yourself, the greatest curse upon us is the failure of our intelligence department. If only we could find out what he is really up to. Alas, alas, the knowledge in itself, so hateful and mawkish a thing, should yet be necessary for power. Sometimes I am almost in despair. All that sustains me is conviction that our realism, our rejection in the face of all temptations, of all silly nonsense and claptrap, must win in the end. Indeed, we see the devils have no power. They can't figure out God. God is always more powerful. And we see that he really believes that the devil must win in the end. But we know the story. We know what the end is. Due to the death and resurrection of Christ, the devil is already defeated. He is already lost. He has already failed in his task on earth. He believes that they must win. We know and believe that the devil has already lost. For me, that's the great insight of the book of Revelation, Some people like to read that book as a book that is telling us about how one day something is going to happen, the things that God's going to do someday in the future. But the way I read that book is it's really telling a persecuted church, a church of martyrs, hang in there because God has already won. And that's the ultimate message of our faith, that God has already won. If you're watching this, you may be watching it in the week leading up to Easter or sometime after Easter. Well, that is Easter for us. That is our Easter joy. That is our Easter hope. The devil is defeated because God has already won. Again, if you have any questions, any thoughts, send them to me and I'll get back to you.